Ako, sige.
Okay. Good morning, everyone. This is Saclolo speaking, and together with my group mates, Guia, Espares, Enoc, and Limalima, we are going to present the variable we have identified that we aim to measure, which is test anxiety in online setting. Test anxiety is a set of physical symptoms and emotional responses that makes it difficult to perform well on tests. Because of the emergence of the COVID-19 pandemic, schools have resorted to using online learning platforms as a means of education in which internet-based classes and modules are done synchronously and or asynchronous. This includes submitting and performing academic tasks such as quizzes and exams online, causing students to experience anxiety due to the multiplicity of reasons, most of which have surfaced because of the shift in learning methods. With the variable we have chosen, five main topics have been identified, namely poor study habits, external factors, pressure, type of environment, and unpreparedness, with its identified subtopics relating to it. For the explanation for poor study habits, online learning negatively affects students in such a way that they develop poor study habits. This is due to the immediate shift from face to face learning to distance learning in just the span of a year, in a way, giving learners only a short amount of time to adapt to the platforms used. The poor study habits our group has identified are as follows: studying while tired and hungry, staying up late to study, cramming, and failing to reflect on the meaning of the lecture or topic. Class and exam schedules affect students' household lifestyle, most of which opt to study for longer hours, creating an interruption to their usual meal schedules, resulting in students anxiously answering their exams while tired and hungry. Synonymous to the first subtopic, their anxiety roots from the fact that they would rather skip their meals or not get enough rest, pressuring themselves to study for hours on end, often choosing to stay up late and answer exams, knowing with knowing and without knowing and getting without adequate rest, affecting their test scores and academic performance. On the other end of having poor study habits, students end up cramming the modules they need to study due to instances where they would prioritize other things, may it be answering pending assignments or doing chores in the house, that causes students to become anxious for an upcoming exam. Lastly, students experience anxiety due to them failing to reflect on the meaning of a lecture or topic. This can be related to cramming, as learners possibly being complacent in the earlier weeks or days before an upcoming exam and end up having difficulties in comprehending the materials needed to be studied. For the explanation for external factors, we have Gia.
So for external factors, the test anxiety most of the students experience in an online setting are caused by external factors that are not usually taken into account in a traditional face-to-face class. These factors are mostly, if not all, beyond the control of the student, which makes it more frustrating and anxiety-inducing. The external factors our group has identified are the following: instability of internet connection, time limit of an exam, and sudden power interruptions. As online students, we are all aware of how important it is to have a stable internet connection, especially during exams. Before taking an exam, our instructors often tell us to make sure that our internet connection is stable. However, as much as we would like to assure that our connection is fine, it usually depends on the type of internet provider we have, because some have fast internet connections which are more expensive than the regular ones, while others do not, which speaks volumes about our quality. Furthermore, the rainy or bad weather in our respective locations can sometimes make things even more complicated because it has a direct impact on the stability of our internet connection. The main impact of not having a stable internet connection, especially when it happens in the middle of an exam, is that the system may fail to record all of the students' answers, requiring them to start all over again. This type of situation can arise, and it can be extremely frustrating for students. The time restriction established for an exam is another external factors that contributes to test anxiety among students in an online setting. Some students are accustomed to checking the number of items on an exam and the time allotted to complete it beforehand. Short time limit as an external factor for a long exam also leads to more pressure on students, making them nervous during the exam and possibly causing a mental block if they focus too much on the taking time. Hence, we believe that it is vital to set a time limit that allows students to think about and examine their answers for each question while also minimizing the tension they are experiencing. Lastly, an external factors that is also a contributing factor for students' anxiety is the possibility of power interruption or power loss. Even though this rarely happens, some places in our country are still prone to this and can possibly shake up a student's confidence in taking significantly to a student's test, while others can be still appropriately acknowledged and re-examined. Overall, alternative measures to reduce the incidence of these inconveniences must be established with the approval and collaboration of the students' respective instructors as well as the entire department. Next is for the explanation for pressure by Enoch.
Pressure is also a variable that affects test anxiety in a online setting. This is when students force themselves to be perfect and make no mistakes that could affect their grades and achievements because of different factors. Pressure can be external or internal. One type of external factor is the pressure coming from our family. Parents usually want their child to perform their best in school, and they constantly remind them about it every day. However, it can be menacing to a student's way of thinking, specifically when their parents do not show appreciation, although they get good grades and progress efficiently. Another external pressure would be peer pressure. When one sees another's achievements and successes, they would want to achieve something on their own as well. Thus, when a student notices that his or her friend has higher test scores, he or she will feel discouraged for not doing better, which then could lead to higher levels of anxiety when taking exams. This pressure they feel as they start to compare the possible outcome of their test performance to their peers will negatively affect their focus and mentality during the actual exams. And lastly, the internal factor is self-imposed pressure. Both of the factors indicated can risk self-imposed pressure to attain their family and friends' expectations. They sometimes oppress themselves from taking a break and having fun. Instead, they would spend their time trying to attain the expectations, thus leading to poor study habits and exhaustion. Despite their hard work in their studies, if students constantly put pressure on themselves, they will be more likely to experience test anxiety, thus negatively affecting their performance on the actual exam. Limalima will be explaining the next variable.
Another variable that could affect test anxiety in an online setting is the student's type of environment where the student takes a test, which could be noise interference, uncomfortable working space, and temperature. The type of environment where a student takes an exam affects or heightens their anxiety in a way that they feel stressed with the cues in their surroundings and distracts their thoughts. Noise interference can be bothersome to students and affect their concentration during the exam. With their concentration being affected, they may feel anxious when taking the exam because they are not able to recall a certain information. In an uncomfortable working space, students may not be able to think properly. For example, a student without personal space, which leads him or her to take an exam in a living room where other family members could be present. Temperature is also vital for students. If a room is too cold, students may feel nervous and anxious, or if it is too hot, students may be too distracted while taking the exam, which is why it is important to set the room temperature if possible so that students are comfortable. Next variable is unpreparedness, which will be discussed by Pamela.
So, unpreparedness is another contributor to test anxiety, and some of its evident manifestations come in the form of procrastination, lack of sleep, and lack of confidence. Procrastination is when people voluntarily avoid or delay performing tasks and only facing these tasks when they only have very little time left to perform them and submit them. Procrastinating means that test takers are unprepared for the test fully because they delay studying for their test that lead test takers to have feelings of anxiety when taking their test. Lack of sleep is another manifestation of being unprepared to take tests. While one might say that the reason why they have very little sleep in the first place is that they pulled an all-nighter to study for their test the night before, depriving oneself of sleep can actually have negative repercussions on a person's memory. Chances are they would retain very little information from what they studied the night before and would get anxious in the middle of taking their tests. Lastly, lacking confidence to take tests is another sign of being unprepared. This lack of confidence usually comes from the person having difficulty understanding the test materials, and in turn, having negative thoughts about taking the test. Rather than make the effort to really understand the test materials, the person tends to give up without even really trying, because in their mind, there really is no point in making an effort because they don't understand the material. With this lack of confidence in the capacity of themselves, feelings of anxiety consume the person at the thought of taking tests. In summary, test anxiety is more than feeling a little nervous before a test. For students who struggle with test anxiety, a bit of pre-exam nervousness turns into debilitating feelings of worry, dread, and fear, which can negatively impact performance. Students can struggle with test anxiety at any age. We want to create these tests mainly because this is a timely, relevant issue that students like us experience as we shift into a new environment for learning where we also identify variables that only emerge as we transition into an online setting. The outcomes of the test can possibly be used as a basis for measuring symptoms and levels of test anxiety a student can have when taking exams online. Thus, we believe that measuring such variables will help us understand more the severity of the situation of students and the possible interventions that could help reduce or eradicate the negative feelings that might interfere with their performance during exams. That would be all. Thank you.